Great. So thank you very much for joining us. So lovely Sylvia there in her studio, who's waving, is going to show us how to fix holes in clothes. This was prompted by lovely Helen, who's there with her headband on and her sewing machine at the ready, who's keen to get a fix in some jeans. So we're going to leave all the microphones on at the moment because we want it to be as free-flowing as possible. So if you've got a question as you're watching Sylvia, just pip in and go for it. But if we start to get lots of background noise, I'll just ask you to turn your microphones off. There's also a chat panel on some of the options that you've got in Teams. So if you wanted to just type something, I'll keep that chat panel open and I'll keep an eye on it. And if we miss you, just do a big wave and I'll just keep my eyes on you all. And if you want to ask a question and you're not being heard, do a big wave and we'll get you in there. But essentially, yeah, Sylvia, I'm going to hand over to her in a second. Just to let you know, Sylvia has been a dedicated and loyal Repair Cafe volunteer for some time now at Catay's in Cardiff, and is kindly giving up her time as usual on a Saturday morning to help us how to fix clothes. So Sylvia, that's a bit of a background about how I know you, but give us a bit of context, obviously, about where on earth you are right now and what you do in your real job.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm in my studio at the moment. It's based in Grangetown in Cardiff. It's a sustainable studio, and I share the studio with loads of other creatives, some of whom sew, a lot of whom who don't sew. They might do jewelry, pottery, all kinds of other things. But we're all makers or artists of some respect. So what I do in my day job is I upcycle unusual textiles. So an example would be a pencil case made from bicycle inner tubes. They've been washed, cut up, and sewn together with a lining made of broken umbrellas.
Brilliant.
So I try to find, we're doing kind of upcycling of a fashion today, but this is like just taking it a step further to things that normally get landfilled, because there's nothing you can do with broken inner tubes once you've finished fixing them, repairing them with puncture repair kits, or broken umbrellas. You just can't fix them, so they end up being incinerated, which is an awful waste. So other types of things I do will be, I might use a broken tent if I need a bigger material. That's for a laptop case, or I might use shirts and pajamas for the inside of my glasses case. So that's where my glasses normally live. Can't see a thing without them, so I'll put them back on quickly. And wash bags and things like that. So my little workstation is right behind us. I've got an industrial sewing machine that's a strong sewing machine for sewing leather. I don't sew leather, I sew rubber, but it's the same kind of idea. But today I'm going to be demonstrating with my domestic sewing machine. That's just a normal sewing machine that normal people will have in their homes. And just to warn you, Keris, you're the only person, this is the first time I've ever used Teams, by the way, and I can see Keris on screen, except you're frozen, you're not moving. So I'm just hoping that as we go through the fix today, that I will be able to see people doing their fixes, so you can hold them up to the camera and ask me any questions.
Right.
But just to explain to you what we're going to be doing today then, if I move on to that. These are my child's cargo shorts, and they did have pockets on the side. He decided to take the pocket off because he didn't like the look, but he did it himself, bless him. So I was impressed that he did it himself, except it was tough to get it off. But where the pocket was fixed is there's actually now holes on both sides of the leg. So now I've got the job of fixing the holes. So that's what we're going to be doing. Now, luckily for me, because he took off the pocket, I can use the pocket as a patch. So I'm going to be cutting up that pocket now and patching. But if I didn't have the exact same material, what I would have done is either to use an old shirt. This is an old shirt that was donated to me because it's got sweaty armpits. It's disgusting, so I've washed it, but it's good enough. We're using as patches, or because it's quite a heavy material. It's a cotton twill material. It's almost a jeans material. I also keep any cut-offs. If you've ever cut the hem off a pair of jeans, they're always handy to. And somebody else gave me a pair of jeans. I use these in the repair cafe. I've been cutting off the legs forever. As patches. And another very good material to use as a fix for this kind of thing is old school trousers. And this is when my child was about, I don't know, 8 years old by the side of it. Very hard wearing trousers. The knees might have gone years ago, but they're perfect, excellent material for using as patches. So yeah, my side concern on Paris, a terrible session, is that you've frozen. So I'm not frozen, I take it.
No, you're not frozen.
Okay, so everyone can see me. I just.
Paris was frozen for me too.
Am I back?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
I can see. Is that Kerry?
Kerry's with the glasses.
Yeah. Kerry, hello.
Hi, I saw Kerry. Yes, I can see Kerry. Oh, and you've got a piece of material. Oh, you're knitting.
I'm knitting. Sorry, I'm doing a baby blanket while I'm watching.
Lovely.
Yes.
Okay. So am I still frozen, Kerry?
No, you're fine.
Okay, good. Okay, so shall we get cracking?
Let's go for it.
Okay. So the first
Are we
thing.
all Cardiff based?
That's a great question, actually. Where is everybody? Helen, where are you?
I'm in Lanishan.
Right. Where are you, Kerry?
St Helens.
Right. I'm in Roath.
Huh?
In Roath,
Well done.
and then Sylvia is in Grangetown.
I'm in Grangetown today. Yes, I live in Fairwater, but I'm normally in, as you said, the Catay's Repair Cafe. But actually, the Canton Repair Cafe is closer to me. I just haven't made it over to the Canton Repair Cafe yet because I started in the Catay's Cafe and I'm just a bit loyal.
That's fine. We've also got two chaps who have joined us as well. So we've got David and Andrew. I don't know if either of you can hear us, but if you can, let us know.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Who's that, Andrew?
No, I'm in Penarth. I volunteer at the Penarth Cafe.
Ah, bless you. Hello.
Hi.
Just
Can you see me? Because I can't see myself.
No, we can't see you, lovely. But just to let you know, we are recording this meeting. So if you don't want to be seen, keep your video off. But if you do, and that would be delightful, please feel free to enable your video.
I'll see if I can do that.
That's great. If you just hover over the screen, you should get some icons up, and there you are. Hey.
Right.
Okay, brilliant. So just to let you know, Sylvia's about to kick off with the fix, so you haven't missed anything. So back to you, Sylvia.
Okay. And also, I think Andrew is going to be joining us at another session, I think, to make a different kind of fix. Are you doing the carpentry fix, Andrew?
Yeah, that's the plan. And, part of my motivation for tuning in for this one is, I'm planning to do a fix for a chair, a wobbly chair, take apart a Windsor chair and put it back together again.
Brilliant. Looking forward to that one. Right, Sylvia, over to you, my love.
Okay, so you've seen the holes I've got to fix. I'm just going to fix one hole at a time. So I'm just going to do one today. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is turn my iron on. So is anybody fixing live with me right now? I need to know what speed I'm going to.
I'm not. I'm just planning to watch.
Okay, so Andrew's not fixing. Kerry's knitting, not sewing.
I'm watching.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's just because if you need to go and get your iron out, it would be helpful for me to know to pause because I've got my iron ready here because I've done a Blue Peter version.
I was planning to fix at the same time, but I'm also happy to watch.
Okay, no, that's fine. Good, excellent, Helen. I mean, it works all the better, of course, if you're doing it live with me. Have you got an iron, Helen?
Yes, yeah, I can go and sort that out very quickly.
Right, if you go and turn your iron on.
Right.
That'd be good. Right, so whilst Helen's away, well, I'll wait for her to come back before I start doing anything. But just to show what I've just done, whilst I was waiting for everybody to come online, I was mentioning that pillowcase that I was going to repurpose for the NHS. It had a tear. So what I've done is I've just put a little patch there, and I've ironed it with fusible hemming material, and I'll show that again later.
Other brands are available.
Yet. Was there a question there?
No, Kerry was just saying other brands are available.
Absolutely, yes. So I wrote actually in the Facebook post that I wrote, there's a number of different examples. There's Bonderweb, Wonderweb, that's kind of unbranded stuff, but they tend to all come in that kind of shape. You could actually use interfacing if you couldn't get hold of one in a strip like this. As long as it's fusible interfacing, that would work as well. And they come in like sheets, so you just cut it the shape.
I've been attempting with fusible interfacing and failing miserably on the ironing bit because it just seems like it does not want to stick.
Yeah, there's the difference would be normally with fusible interfacing. Well, first, you need to make sure that you turn it the right way because only one side is sticky with fusible interfacing. Do read the packet because sometimes they'll need a dry iron with steam or a damp cloth on the top.
Yeah, I was doing all of that.
And the key thing to know, I'll be doing it in a minute, when you're ironing, is not to do this action as we normally do on iron, because that will just move everything. So you just press. If you're not getting any joy, sorry, Helen, mixing my names up, then, that one is fixed. I can turn it upside down and it's not coming off. I would still sew it on top to make sure if you're going to wash something or if it's in an area that's going to have a lot of rubbing, I would definitely stitch on top. But it just helps to stabilize the material, and that is also the purpose of fusible interfacing. If you are struggling with fusible interfacing, I don't use fusible interfacing because I just don't have any because I don't use it in my daily life. Then I would recommend buying something like this. So yeah, as somebody mentioned earlier, there are different brands. This happens to be Wonderweb. There's Bonderweb. It's called hemming tape. Hemming tape. So just Google hemming tape, or when the shop's open, or if you can find something in your sewing case. This is a type of glue. It fuses on both sides of the material. So you can put a patch on the bottom. You sandwich it with this in the middle, and then your torn piece of clothing on the top. So it's a sandwich. This is like a sticky jam layer, and then you can iron it to fuse it. It fuses by the combination of steam and heat. Okay, so back to the actual fix then. This one, you can see there's a lot of fraying going on here. Sorry, I just thought stripes might not be the best thing to be showing on screen because they can fiddle with the screen, can't they? But anyway, this is what I'm going to be trying to do. Now, it's frayed, but the first thing I need to do is iron it flat because there's like different little bits hanging off here and you just can't see what you're doing properly. So the first thing I recommend always with any kind of tear is to iron it flat. So I'm doing that right here. So there's my iron, and I'm just going to be ironing it flat, checking that I've got the right setting. This is cotton, so I've got it on cotton setting. Again, I don't use the normal ironing motion. This is just to press, keep it in the same position, just put some heat on it. And then, you see it? Then, either using sewing shears, or you can use little embroidery scissors or little snippers. It really doesn't matter as long as they're sharp, because this is only like small little threads. I'm going to snip those threads off. They don't help your fix in the slightest, and they're just going to mess up with the collars and everything they got, and they can get tangled in the needle of the machine. It might be, I've got a little bit sticking up here. You could just snip it off completely if you don't mind being able to see the patch on the back of the material. If you want a less visible mend, then keep it on.
Right, I'm just going to pop off and quickly iron my jeans.
Okay. So I'm just trimming this here. It all depends on how neat you want it. If they're like a work pair of trousers, it really doesn't matter that much. And really, this all is down to the aesthetic that you want. If you want it to look really nice, or if you want it to look funky with a different kind of patch. There's a big...
Sylvia, can I just jump in a second, just to let everybody know, if your screen is split across lots of people, but you actually just want to see Sylvia, you can actually, if you scroll your mouse across the screen, you'll see there's 3 dots. If you select the, if you hover over Sylvia's screen, you can then click the 3 dots and you can pin Sylvia's screen, and that makes her maximized just for you, and then everybody else is along the bottom. Does that help? Helen?
Yes.
Just to let you know, if your screen's split across lots of people and actually all we really want to see is Sylvia, if you just hover over Sylvia's screen, there should be 3 little dots. If you click those little dots, you can say pin this screen or something, and that means that Sylvia will become big.
Oh, lovely, thank you.
Yeah, that should be better for the detail. All right.
Okay, we're back.
We're back. We're back.
Okay, so I'm going to take my patch. As I said, this is the actual pocket that was removed from the trouser, so it does match, but it really doesn't matter if it doesn't. This particular patch, it's more of a kind of big tear than a hole, really. Helen, have you got a hole or a tear?
I've got more of a hole because I tend to wear through my jeans at the crotch, which I know isn't unusual. Right. So
can you show them up on the screen?
Yep. So you might not be able to make it out very clearly, but there's a hole. Yeah. Can you see that on that side?
Yes, okay.
And on the other side, it's wearing thin, so I wanted to do something preemptive on that side.
Excellent. Well, as I was just going to say, with your hole, make sure that when you cut your patch, and I've got a little one here because there was no wear on the trousers, it was only where it was just on touched a bit carelessly. So there's a defined little hole there. But with you, I can see that you've got a little hole, but you've got a lot of wear either side of it. Make sure that you make your patch big enough to cover the wear.
Right.
Your patch, I hope, is from a similar kind of material. So have you got something like a denim? Excellent.
Yes, I call them donor jeans.
Yes, perfect. So cut a piece that's big enough. Normally with patches, if we're using some kind of hemming tape, we don't need to secure the edges. So you don't need to do a zigzag or anything like that. There'll be a tiny bit of fraying, but really we're going to be securing it with the hemming tape anyway.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter. But all I'm going to do with my little patch is just to iron it flat so there's no creases in my patch. You might be lucky, Helen, in that you don't need to iron.
No, this looks fairly flat, this bit of denim.
Yeah, this is a very creasing type of cotton. Okay, so now I've got a flat piece of patch. I've got my hole, and the next thing I'll need is the hemming tape. So I've just taken it out of the packet. Now I'm going to tilt my screen so that you can see quite how I'm going to cut it up right here. Okay, so I hope you can see that there. So all I'm going to do, any kind of scissors will do, is just to cut the hemming tape and place it on the patch. You want it to fit the patch as exactly as you can. It doesn't matter if it's a tiny bit smaller, but don't make it bigger than the patch, because otherwise you're going to fuse the patch to your iron or to the other side of your trouser leg, and then you'll have fused trouser legs. You won't be able to get your leg into it.
And is it okay to overlap within the parameter of the piece, it's okay to overlap that wonder web stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
So, in fact, if you've got particularly heavy-duty material, they do recommend that you use more than one layer, but I've only ever used one layer, it's fine. But yes, if your piece, you don't have to cut it up in such a tiny jigsaw that it fits absolutely exactly. So yeah, if there's overlaps in the strips, that's perfectly fine. I've just put 2 strips in here. They've slightly overlapped each other, that's perfectly fine.
Great.
It's like making a lasagna, you're just kind of making it sort of fit with pins. Just the only thing to be careful of is make sure that it's obviously big enough to seal your hole. If you've got an exact hole, Helen, you might just want to snip a little bit out of your hole there, just to make sure that it doesn't, that it's not going to damage your iron.
Right.
Because what you're trying to do is everything around the hole is going to be glued with this hemming tape. Now, I've got this now, so I've got my patch and I've got the hemming tape on it. This is the precarious sort of thing. I need to slide it in. Oh, also what I could have done here, because it's trousers or a sleeve would be the same. I've got one of these attachments that came with my ironing board. It's the sleeve thing. And this is what I use actually when I go to a repair cafe, because it's a mini ironing board. So normally what I would do is I would put the sleeve or the trouser leg onto that, so it makes sure that you've only got one layer at a time, so you've got no risk whatsoever of gluing 2 pieces of trouser leg together. Anyway, I've got it on the main ironing board right now, so I'll just run with it. So what I'm going to do is tuck the hole into position. It's entirely up to you. Sometimes I'll do it from the reverse, so I can see exactly where the patch is going. So you might want to turn it inside out to do this. Normally on jeans, I will turn it inside out. On this, because the tear is so small, I can see exactly where I'm placing it, and it's not like way up in the crotch in a difficult area. So I can see exactly what I'm doing right here. So I've left it on the right side. But I recommend, Helen, that you might want to turn yours inside out to do it.
Sylvia, really ignorant question here, but when you put that patch inside, is the wonder web facing upwards towards the hole?
Yes, so just think of it as a sandwich, and the wonder web is the jam.
Yeah, oh
So,
great.
so
Okay.
I've got the patch on the bottom, wonder web in the middle, and then the actual trousers to be fixed on
Brilliant.
top. Now this hemming tape, there's glue on both sides. It makes absolutely no difference what side of that goes where.
Great.
So all you don't want is for it to be peeking out of the hole, because we're now going to be ironing it. Now, sorry, Helen, what I didn't mention for you earlier, you might want to go off and get it, a gritty towel. A manky old tea towel. It might look awfully stained. It is clean, it's just stained, so it's not used as a tea towel anymore. But I've dampened it. So what they say with this hemming tape, to be honest, I really don't understand why they say it. They say use a dry iron with a damp cloth. I have no idea how that makes a difference between a steam iron if you use a lot of steam. But that is what they say, and that is what I've always used. So I've never actually tried it with a steam iron. So yes, a damp cloth, either cotton or linen is ideal, but in the repair cafe, I've used whatever I've got to hand. I've used another spare piece of patch clothing, whatever. And I'm just going to place that on top of the patch. Now, if you've got it, if you've got the patch in a 3D kind of section, and a difficult kind of section like the crotch, you might just want to pin it in place. If you don't need pins, don't use pins, because it can be difficult to get the pins out once you put them in. So if you are using pins, just use them on the corner of your patch. Now, again, because I've done the patch on the right side of this work, I wouldn't really know where that is. But if I were to do that, I would only try and pin it into the corners Once you fuse the hemming tape with the glue, it can just get quite difficult to prise them out again. If you've got thin pins, it's easier. My pins happen to be very, very fat pins. If you haven't got any pins and you really want to put something, fix things into place, you can use, what do you call them? What do you call nappy pins?
Safety pins.
Safety pins. Oh.
Just to let you know,
I
don't have any of the hemming tape, so I'm going to watch from this point onwards, so I won't disappear.
Okay, you don't actually have to use hemming tape. So the only reason to use hemming tape, particularly with a strong material like denim, you don't really need it. It just stabilizes the fabric. So it just means that it's easier for you to manipulate when you put it on the machine. It's not going to move. So it's stuck it together. So just think of that jam. You can then, wave your sandwich in the air after that. It's not going to come loose. If you then want to slide it under the machine, it's stuck where it is. So it's safe. You don't actually have to have it. I do recommend using it for very fine materials because if you're using like a shirt, so if I were to patch a shirt like this, or even, this one's cotton, so it's not too bad. I've used like viscose ones, which are really quite slippery, and I've had huge tears. Honestly, it was as if somebody, like a bear had scratched a shirt. The person who I did the fix for will know who he is. He had 3 shirts identical, and I asked him, how on earth can you get your shirt so ripped? And he said, he gets onto the dance floor and he just goes for it. They get ripped to shreds. I don't know what he was doing. Anyway, there were huge, massive tears. I wouldn't have attempted to fix those without any hemming tape, because it just would have moved under the sewing machine. It would have been really difficult to control it and do a tidy fix. So for that, it was absolutely necessary to use hemming tape, just to get it into a position where you can just move it without worrying, just to stabilize it. But with jeans, it really doesn't matter. It's
tried pinning the patch on, and I'm not good enough yet to get it to sit nicely as I get it under the machine. So I think I will use that technique, and I'll wait till I can get some delivered.
Okay. Well, the session is being recorded, so yeah, you'll be able to listen back if you get stuck. So back we go then. There's my little hole. I've now got the patch and the Wonderweb sandwiched in the middle. I'm now going to take my damp cloth, not wet. It's not dripping, but it is properly damp. Going to lie on top, and then with a hot iron, I'm just going to leave it there. Now, according to the package, it says 20 seconds, I believe. 10 seconds. There you go. If you use a different company, make sure that you do read the instructions. They might be slightly different for each one. I'm guessing that that's about 10 seconds. I've never ever counted. I'm gonna have a look. Now I've got a damp patch on my trousers. And what I normally do after that, I just try and dry it off, because the label on these things say, and then wait 10 minutes. Who does that? So I kind of dry it off. Obviously I try not to singe my thing now that I'm trying to fix it, but I kind of dry it off. But whatever you do, do not use the normal ironing motion. So just press down, just to dry it off a bit. The reason that we don't want to be doing this kind of thing is because it's just going to move. Though I'm setting the glue right now, it isn't perfectly set because it won't be for 10 minutes. So it could move. It's not a perfect fix yet. It will get better. Now, it's time to go over to the machine. I'll just move you to the other side so you can see my machine. So I have just got a normal bog standard 1980s Singer sewing machine, which is worth absolutely nothing. I've even tried to get it serviced, and the service repair guys won't service it because they say it's such a rubbish machine that in all likelihood they might accidentally break it. I'll blame them for it. It's just not worth a fix. It works, so that's all we need. Nothing fancy, just a regular sewing machine. Now, because I'm doing a trouser leg, so trouser legs and sleeves, they're the same idea. I'm going to remove this. So are you familiar how to do that, Helen? Or
Yes,
does anybody not know how to do that if you think that you need to do that? Put your hand up. I can't see you, but Kara's will.
Yeah, looks okay, my love.
Okay, so yeah, we'll remove that because it's just easier then to slide the trousers or the sleeve onto it, so that you're not doing the underside. You're not sewing the two sides of your trousers together. You don't have to do it. It just makes it easier. It stops you having to bunch things up and make mistakes. Okay. So now let me just show you the settings. Now all machines are going to be slightly different. I think you can see it there. So for me, I need a straight stitch. So it's number 1 on my machine over here. I'm going to set my, sorry, I don't want a straight stitch. It's set on a straight stitch. I want a zigzag. You don't have to do a zigzag. It just means that you have to use your sewing machine less if you do put it on a zigzag. You just need fewer stitches. It's just a better thing for effects. I'm using the needle in the middle. It doesn't need to be on the left or the right, but it really doesn't matter if it is. And for me on this machine, my B setting is my zigzag setting, but you do what you need on your machine. In terms of the length of the stitch, I'm just going to leave it on something quite normal. You can experiment on your machine. There's no hard and fast about this. We are not doing Savile Row tailoring. This is just to secure your machine. Oh, now, I've already turned the machine on before positioning the foot. So ignore what I'm doing right now because I just moved the foot and because the machine was already on, not something that you should do, stop again. So use it back in.
Just need the camera slightly altered, Sylvia. Fab. Yeah, fab.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, you can see I've got a thread here. Oh, colour of thread. I should actually have used a lighter colour. It really doesn't matter. So I happen to have black thread. Keep your thread to the back when you start. This is not fundamental, but it just helps to keep your threads so that you can snip them off at the end and tidy up, so that they don't get all tangled. And all I'm going to do now is put the lever down. You'll have some kind of lever. It might be on the side here, it might be over here. You're going to put your lever down so that your presser foot, this bit, clamps your clothing. Put it in the right place so that you're going to start on the top. We're kind of going to go round it, and you can do a square. You can follow it exactly. It's entirely up to you. This is your artistic license of how you're going to do it. But if you can sort of see, I can't quite see what I'm doing there in terms of the camera. My tear goes down this way. It's got a bit of a kind of triangular shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across here, down here. I'm going to do a little square, and then I'll just do a few rows going across just to secure it. But really, it's down to you. You want it to be secure, but you don't want so many stitches that it makes it really stiff. So if you make the stitches too close, if you make just too many stitches, just cover it in stitches, yes, it'll be a good fix, but it might not be comfortable to wear. So that's just a little bit of a balance. So we're trying to do enough, but not too many. It's all trial and error though. And it depends on your material as well. Okay, so I'm going to start sewing now, so I'm going to make a bit of a noise. Actually, I just realised that this hasn't been properly threaded. It might have moved as I was bringing it in from the car. Okay, so got my thread to the back, clamped it down, and I'm going to start. Now I've set it to do a zigzag. You don't have to set it to do a zigzag. Now, when I've come to the edge and gone over it a bit, can you see there? The needle happened to be up. I'm just going to sink the needle into the material because I've got to the end of the row. I've got to the end of the fix. because now I need to raise this so that the presser foot is now raised so that I can move it. Because obviously we need to be going round in a square or a circle or something or other. So by raising the presser foot, you can move it. It's no longer clamped. But by putting the needle in, it stops the thread from moving all over the place, and you're making a huge, massive loop instead. So now I've moved it, I'm going to put the clamp back down so that the presser foot is engaged again, and now I'm going in the other direction now, so I'm making a right angle just because I've decided that I'm making a square. So again, I've stopped. It happens to have been stopped in the up position. I use, sorry, if you're not, if you don't know quite how to do that, if it's not in the right position, you just move it with the motor of your sewing machine. So I'm going to move it so that it goes in. Once it's in, you can lift it up and you move it again. So this is the third section that I'm doing now, third part of my square. Again, put it down so that I can move it, turn it, oops, clamp up, move it around. Make sure that you're not fixing the other side of the leg to it, because once you've moved it a few times, it can get a bit, and it's the same with pockets. It's easy to accidentally sew pockets to your trouser leg. Make sure that they're out. And this is basically it. This is all that you need to do. Whenever you're moving it, make sure that your needle is down before you move the clamp up. Then to secure it, because the stitches could come loose if you just left it like that. When you get back to the beginning, or right at the beginning, when you do a few stitches, then there'll be a button somewhere on your machine. In my case, I press it in. Sometimes you put a lever up to reverse. So on my, can you see it there? On my machine, is your machine there? There's my button to press in so that I can do a reverse stitch. But not every machine has got the exact same setting, but all of them will have a reverse stitch somewhere. So I'm just going to press it in so that I go backwards and forwards. And then when I've finished, I'll make sure that the needle goes up, and you can see also on the machine, when the needle goes up, we've got this bit coming up here. So that should be near the top, which means that on the bottom, your needle is up and clear of your material. And that's all there is to it. You can then, the clamp goes up, you pull it out, and as you pull it out, you just take a good pair of scissors, embroidery scissors or whatever, and you can snip it. You can snip it right close to your stitching. It will not come loose because you did the reverse stitching. And then you turn it inside out because, of course, you've got two threads. You've got one on the top and one on the bottom. You snip it really close to stitching. You don't want any fraying. And then the initial thread that we had, take that off. And on the front, the same. If there's any loose threading on the front, one that you had hanging off when you started it, you trim that, and you're done. That's all there is to it. So I've just done a zigzag all the way around. Now, really, what I would do is just do a couple of rows in the middle, a kind of zigzag of a zigzag, to doubly secure the patch, so that because this was a fraying little section, I don't want that to re-fray. By the time it's washed and worn a few times, the hemming tape will keep it secure, but eventually it'll start wearing off and start fraying. So just do a couple more rows like that. It doesn't matter if I put it back under the machine, or I could have just continued as I did and did a thorough job of it all in one go. And you can Sylvia, sorry, yes?
I presume you could get quite creative with this. So once you've done everything that you've just done, presumably you could just get a pretty patch of something and do it on the top if you wanted to make it look pretty.
Yes, absolutely. And particularly where you've got holes. So this is more of a tear than a hole. So right. I can patch it quite neatly. And had I used a lighter thread, that would have been less visible.
Sure.
But definitely, if you've got a pretty patch or it's in a place, I mean, particularly when it's in your crotch, you don't really want to be drawing attention to it.
No.
You normally do quite you try and match things up if they're in your crotch. Having said that, normally by the time you've stood up, nobody can actually see your crotch. So,
Yeah, true.
but yeah, if it's in your knee or the front of the thigh or whatever, then yes, by all means, you can get creative. You can either just use a different kind of thread, or you could use a nice patch. You can put the patch like I've done underneath, or you could put the patch on top. It really doesn't matter. And because we're doing the zigzag, you don't actually need to zigzag the patch separately. The reason to zigzag instead of a straight stitch is that it stops things fraying.
Right.
But because we're doing the zigzag, it'll stop the patch fraying anyway, as well as giving you a secure. So you can just do it all in one. There's no need to treat the patch separately before you attach it to the garment. If it's underneath or on top, it doesn't make a difference. So yeah, by all means, you can cut out little flowers, triangles, anything that you want out of your patches. You can make them any shape and put them on the bottom or the top. The principle is identical.
Sure. Okay, that is revelatory to me. I don't know about everybody else, but that is far more simpler than I thought. And I think it's the fear of tackling something like that rather than the reality of actually doing it. So I'm so glad that we've recorded this session because I'm definitely going to be referring back to it.
So for me, the thing that makes it easier is the hemming tape.
Okay.
Because without the hemming tape, it just slides all over the place.
Sure.
When you put it under the machine. And when you then you put your needle down to turn it, it'll move again. And
Sure.
it's really hard to keep it in position.
Sure.
So that's where I think the fear would come in. I mean, all the repairs that I've done, I would be really fearful of getting that right. But
Yeah.
if you use hemming tape, it just makes it so much easier. Just line things up in the first instance. Don't get the hemming tape stuck on your iron. Once you've done that, it's fine. You can then sew it into any shape, configuration, patch that you want.
That's absolutely brilliant. Does anybody have any questions whatsoever?
No. What other sessions do you plan to do?
Oh gosh, we've got quite a few coming, Kerry. So me and Sylvia were having chat before this. So we're going to try and get a hand sewing session in at some point. And then the lovely Andrew that's on screen is going to help us with fixing broken items that are wood. So wobbly chairs, hopefully. We've had quite a lot of requests for bikes, some for jewellery. So over the coming weeks, we'll be setting up as many sort of online sessions as we possibly can. So just keep an eye on social media, I guess. The other thing that I would say is that I know Sylvia said, you know, if you don't have a sewing machine, as we're all South Wales based, it's worth me mentioning that there's an organisation whereby you can borrow sewing machines for £5 for a week, not bad quality ones. So the organisation is called Benthyg. So that's BENTHYG. See if I can get it up on the screen while we're chatting. And you can borrow lots of things from there, but specifically, I think there are 3 sewing machines that you can borrow. And like I said, cheap as chips. I'll just share. If I just share my screen. You can see
Are they still operating during the lockdown, Gareth?
Sadly not, but it will be something that you can have a go at afterwards. Can you see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, so
Brilliant.
probably in hobbies. Oh gosh, got a lot of things there, but I'm sure there's sewing machines in this section. I'll just type it in so you can get a sense. In fact, yeah, there you go. So there's a few sewing machines there. So don't let that stop you, is what I'm trying to say. If you want to be able to do something but don't have the ability, then just go there and borrow it. Go for it. Any other questions for Sylvia?
I was just going to jump in there as you're talking about machines. If anybody doesn't have a machine and wants to do the fixes, you can do it by hand. And
Yeah.
there's nothing to say that they're any worse or better. It just gives you a different aesthetic. So
Yeah.
normally with hand sewing, people do tend to deliberately do visible mending, it's called, so that you can see your stitches. It's just a little bit more difficult to, well, you can do it, to hide your stitches when you're doing hand sewing. But people tend to use hand sewing in order to deliberately show their creativity, to show their stitching, to show their patching, and they can look really wonderful. If you want to look on Pinterest or Google for borrow stitching, B-O-R-O, or sashiko, S-A-S-H-I-K-O. It's a Japanese tradition to mend kimonos as they were traditionally always, indigo kimonos with white thread. So it was definitely very visible to be putting white thread on indigo. But people use it these days for all kinds of things, for jeans and everything. And there's lovely shapes and patterns and templates that you can just have a look at. You don't need to buy anything particularly. But then you'd be using much thicker thread, so embroidery thread. There's proper sashiko thread that you could buy, which is strong, sturdy, usually in white, but they can have other colours by now. But normal embroidery thread will do, not the type of thread that I'm using today that's way too thin to show the stitches, because then you're making a feature of the stitches. But if on the Repair Cafe Wales Facebook page, there was a thread that was started asking people to list what fixes they wanted.
Yeah.
And provided that I'm able to, or there are plenty of other sewing volunteers out there in the Repair Cafe world, provided that we've got the skills to demonstrate something, then I'll happily do, if you want to do a hand sewing fix like that, I'll happily do a hand sewing fix or anything else. Somebody's asked for buttons. Buttons are quite easy to put on, but somebody said, well, yeah, I can put the button on, but then it comes off again. There's particular things that I can do to make a demonstration to try and secure the buttons, to make sure. So it's a little bit of an extra fix, just to make sure that if you think that you knew how to put buttons on, but then they popped off, or you barely used your material, then yeah, I can do a fix for that.
Can you do a session on replacing zips in jeans? Because that is an absolute nightmare. So I'd love to watch someone else struggle with it.
Yeah, you can watch me struggle doing one if you want.
Yes, please.
They often come up in repair cafes, and just as a disclaimer, I am a volunteer repairer. Yes, I can sew, and yes, I've done I've done zip fixes. They're a bugger. They're awful. The reason it's difficult to repair a zip, particularly the zip of a fly in a jeans, is because if you were starting from scratch and making a pair of jeans, the zip is one of the first things that you put in.
Yeah, and you build onto it.
So, which means that when you're repairing it, you don't want to take all of the jeans apart to start from scratch. All you want to do is fix the zip, but it's difficult because the zip is tucked in. So you're kind of doing it in reverse. So it's a completely different, it's the wrong process to try and repair the zip without kind of starting from scratch and building up
help,
the jeans.
Please.
So yeah, I absolutely hate seeing zips, but they are a very, very common fix in the Repair Cafe. Could I ask you, though you've mentioned it to me today, Helen, and Keris might be taking a note, but if you wrote it on that thread for Repair Cafe Wales on Facebook, if you could do that, it just means that other people can join in and see it. So everybody then will get the message of when we repair it.
Sadly, I think somebody else has already requested zippers and jeans as well. Sorry.
It's a typical thing. Zips are a bane. We need to find a better way of making clothes, because zips do break, and when they do break, sometimes they're fixable, but often they're not, and it can ruin a piece of clothing. And even if you can fix it, it is a bugger to fix.
Yeah.
So,
You've got to be fair. Elasticated waists aren't groovy, are they? Let's face it.
Too true.
I'm hearing on the radio and all social media, everybody's in elasticated waist these days, aren't they? And these days of social isolation, everybody's at home and everybody's moved to elastic.
I have a quick question about the repair. So what you've just done is for a hole and a tear, whereas what I tend to do in my jeans is wear them through. So is there anything that I would do differently? Because I don't particularly want that patch to be terribly visible.
No, I would say just find a thread. It's just the top thread that you need. It doesn't matter what colour the bottom thread is, as long as the tension on the machine is right. Just try and find a thread that is quite closely matched to your jeans. So it's not the orange hem colour that you're looking for. If you're struggling to find the exact match, go for a slightly darker shade.
Right.
So if you've got a choice between, oh, I've got one that's slightly lighter blue and one that's nearly black, choose the blacker one. The blacker one will be less visible than one that's a little bit too light. The light one will tend to catch the light and to shine a bit more. So that would be my advice there. But now that you know how to fix it, patch it before it goes through.
Yes, I've got a pile to get through. So I would still patch, would I patch that on the inside or the outside?
If you don't want it to be visible, patch it on the inside. So follow the steps that I did today, because I patched it on the inside. You might find it easier to turn it inside out, to put the patch on, and to make sure that it's pinned in place properly. If you're really struggling and it's moving too much, tack it in place. Just do some hand tacks. It doesn't have to be brilliant because you can take them out afterwards. But if you're really unsure and that it moves, even when you're trying to put the wonder web on it, just put a few tacks in it.
Okay.
Because, like I say, it's difficult if you're using pins, that when you, if you've glued it properly, it's actually difficult to take the pins out because you've glued the pins in as well.
Great, thank you.
And just make sure that the patch is big enough to cover that worn area. So it's not just the hole, but the whole of the worn area.
That's absolutely brilliant. A massive thank you to you, Sylvia. That was absolutely brilliant. And
thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
Really appreciate that.
Great,
really interesting.
Great first digital repair session. So thanks for being a guinea pig and marvellous at doing what you do as well.
Lovely to meet you all.
Thank you very much,
You
Kerry.
too, Kerry.
All right, we'll sign off here and we'll speak soon. All right.
Magic.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.